And these are the same people that will tell you to pull yourself up by your bootstraps. Hi, welcome to Racist of the Week. My name is Reese Waters. This is where we highlight the stupidity and hypocrisy of discrimination in hopes we can build a more perfect union. And also laugh. As usual, I would like to thank today's sponsor, Racism. And as usual, if you have any nominees, you can put them in the comments. You can email me at reese@reesewaters.com. Now, I have had a lot of content that I've dropped surrounding this anti-DEI legislation, much of it surrounding Jasmine Crockett.
You tell me which white men were dragged out of their homes. You tell me which one of them got dragged all the way across an ocean and told that you were gonna go and work.
But there were also some other notable entries that I felt deserved to be highlighted, and how none of those segments ended up being Racist of the Week when the very premise is the most racist thing ever. Come on down. Congratulations on your first nominee, America. Oh, you want in? I give you Congresswoman Ayanna Pressley out of Massachusetts.
This bill, titled the Dismantling DEI Act, is an utter disgrace. Having sat and read the text in preparation for today's markup, I have yet another example to tell my constituents about the unserious work of the Republican Party. Now, I'll work with anyone serious about progress who wants to center the people who call this country home. This isn't it. The Committee on Oversight has the broadest jurisdiction in the entire House of Representatives to investigate any topic it chooses, but we are debating legislation that denies the sky is blue, water is wet, and racism is real.
Now, it's at this point I would like to ask a question that I asked, I believe in one of my prior videos. How is it, just projecting forward, because I know about the work to try and dismantle the Department of Education and the railing against CRT, and we can only imagine that both are going to intensify over the course of the next 4 years. How do you explain my existence here while simultaneously denying the existence of both racism and oppression? They really are going to claim we came through the border. Like they really are. I mean, one thing they would never claim is that we were here. That much we know.
Unless you're one of the first Americans, a Native American, you came from someplace else.
To let them tell it, they gave indigenous peoples a couple of town names and a couple of highways in exchange for never having to acknowledge that they were here.
The major provision of the bill says to ban anything that acknowledges racism. And a few pages later in the exact same bill, there are multiple provisions discussing the presence of racism. This Republican approach is as predictable as it is nonsensical. On one hand, they're saying that racism does not exist. On the other hand, they are saying there is rampant reverse racism. Well, how do you reverse something that never existed in the first place? Riddle me that.
Now, irregardless of how nonsensical that is to reverse something that never existed in the first place, how do you explain the necessity for anti-DEI legislation without acknowledging the reasons for DEI and the thought process that went into constructing DEI legislation? How do you do that?
How do you define DEI?
Was it just out of the kindness of Republican hearts? Because we all know it was you guys that, of course, put that together. So out of the kindness of your hearts, you decided, you know what? These spaces getting a little bit too white. Yeah, because when it comes to these potlucks, we don't have nearly enough choices. Okay, it's way too much potato salad at these work potlucks. We gotta mix this up a little bit.
Who made a potato salad?
Out of the kindness of your own hearts, you just decided that you wanted to diversify. Didn't have nothing to do with racist hiring practices. Didn't have nothing to do with all white mandates going back decades and colleges and social circles, churches, you name it, right? Didn't have nothing to do with that. No, we just one day we just was like, we really should help the Black community because, irregardless of anything that they've gone through, because Lord knows we haven't done anything to them. So just irregardless of whatever they've been going through, they haven't been able to pick themselves up by their bootstraps. So we just decided, independent of ourselves, that we would try and help them. And then we later realized that, all this stuff that was showing up at the work potluck was just too spicy. Like we realized that it really is harmful to our own to up and decide that we want to help the other group for absolutely no reason.
While this Republican policy may have a new name, it's the same old tired game. Look, y'all are entitled to your opinions, but not a denial of the facts. Do you all know your history? Do you know American history?
Now, to that, I would say they absolutely do. Because if they didn't, they wouldn't be working so hard to hide it. Yeah. It is an admission. All the work that they're doing to try and sanitize American history is pretty damning of what they know their part is in it.
The original Constitution counted enslaved individuals as 3/5 of a person. During World War II, the federal government forcibly relocated and incarcerated 110,000 Japanese Americans. The FHA practiced redlining in the 1930s and 60s to deny mortgages to Black Americans, which is why we have a racial wealth gap today. I could go on. The GI Bill, which is supposed to be race neutral, denied access to Black Americans, denying them equal access to education and housing benefits, which is why we do not have generational wealth. Don't talk to me about merit when those Black servicemen fought for our freedoms.
Now, typically, it's at this point that I would run that back, but I'm actually not going to do that because it was just so smooth, clean, and beautiful the first time. Very well said.
And I'd also just like to take a personal note of privilege to say, please keep Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s name out of your mouths. Yes. Your perversion of his words and his mission when his children have asked you to stop invoking his name and perverting his work when he was a proud and unapologetic Black man fighting for equality for Black Americans and all marginalized people.
Not only do they go against the wishes of his children, but they absolutely go against the wishes of their own ancestors who, by and large, refuse to listen, acknowledge, accept, or even respect Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. up and until the end of his life. Yeah. Y'all didn't think we were gonna remember that, did you? Yeah, we remember that.
So you all are entitled to your opinions, but not a denial of the facts. But I'm not surprised that you would deny American history.
I'll be honest, I kind of diverge with her at this point. I actually am surprised. I actually am surprised because I had no idea how fragile the American psyche was at this particular point in time. I thought that things that I realized were problematic in the 80s as I was learning about American history, I thought maybe at this point, grown men would have come to a point of acceptance, but clearly I was mistaken. Clearly, we were cut from a very different cloth. I would also say that in light of these conversations that we have about American history and who we are as Americans and how we process things, never are the thoughts, hearts and minds of Black children ever centered in any of these discussions. So we're not just going to hide the reality of American history. We're also going to allow young Black children to internalize their place in this country with little to no context.
What I am, though, is committed. Committed to speaking truth to power, committed to standing up for marginalized communities and vulnerable people, committed to ensuring that everyone has equal opportunity to buy a house, to work a job, to pursue higher education, and to live in a society that is fair and just. A colleague across the aisle invoked the phrase of, "We must do everything to stop government-sponsored oppression." Well, I've just enumerated numerous examples, which is exactly why we have legislation and an executive order to reverse this harm.
And I would also add that until the harm is reversed, that same oppression is continued. It doesn't end until it's reversed. So it is comical to hear we must do everything to stop government sanctioned oppression when we're engaged in multiple aspects of it right now.
And that is why I'm committed to opposing this bill and urge my colleagues to do the same.
That was extremely well said and well done by Congresswoman Ayanna Pressley.
The Biden-Harris administration has forced DEI initiatives into nearly every agency and program within the federal government. DEI initiatives destroy morale, decrease recruitment, and potentially violate federal law.
Whose morale? Huh? Whose morale you talking about? Huh? Because I just asserted, how these conversations never center around Black people or Black thoughts or Black feelings at all. So I'm just curious whose morale exactly that is that's being diminished. Also, as far as recruitment is concerned, so what you mean to tell me is these huge pools of minority candidate possibilities, now them being brought into consideration diminishes recruitment? That's what you want me to believe?
These initiatives spread divisive and exclusive ideologies in our federal government workplaces.
Divisive and exclusive to divisive to who? So it's divisive to have diversity, because the idea of accepting people that are diverse is so beyond the pale. So their very existence has to be divisive. You know what I mean? Kind of like when we had our boys club when we was in the 4th grade, and then a girl showed up, and it was divisive because we didn't have the maturity at the time to accept a girl in our boys clubs.
Do solemnly swear to be a He-Man and hate women and not play with them or talk to them unless I have to, and especially never fall in love.
That's what we're working with as adults.
And taxpayers are left footing the bill. For these reasons, I support the Dismantle DEI Act. H.R. 8706 aims to repeal the federal DEI programs across the federal government. This bill prohibits funding for such programs and creates a new Civil Rights Act protection against requiring individuals to participate in such programs.
Just think about that. A Civil Rights Act to protect people's racism and discriminatory practices. We're going to protect your civil rights, in order to be racist. That is where we are in 2024.
The bill will lend legislative support to the incoming Trump administration's efforts to eradicate the Biden-Harris administration's entrenchment of leftist DEI policies in the executive branch. I urge my colleagues to support this necessary bill.
You know, one thing that I actually have to appreciate about Trumpism and Trump administration. So Trump has a lot of people that have put a battery in his back, and they see a lot of possibility with the power that they can attain for themselves in order to whiten all these spaces. So in order to go along with it, because obviously we know there can be no nuance in MAGA, And you know what? I'm actually going to let Maga off the hook because that's generally how our politics is right now. There can be no nuance. So he is dragging all of these people along for this ride that's going to look historically as ugly as we see it right now. The James Comers of the world will go down as the one who sat there and explained a civil rights provision to protect people to be racist and therefore dismantle DEI and talk about how the oppression is anti-white. He is dragging all of these people down the toilet bowl of history, and it is something to see.
People are flushing toilets 10 times, 15 times, as opposed to once.
But she had backup. I also give you Congresswoman Summer Lee of Pennsylvania.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm not in favor of the Dismantle Diversity, Equity, Inclusion Act, or what it maybe would more aptly be called the dismantling any semblance of support or opportunity for certain American acts. We know who those Americans are. Americans who have not enjoyed centuries of unfair advantages by keeping others enslaved or segregated or disenfranchised or incarcerated or redlined or gerrymandered or excluded by law. Americans who've lived with disabilities or had their relationships criminalized or their gender expression demonized. If we're being honest here, this bill, which will wipe out every diversity, equity, and inclusion program in our federal agencies, plus those who contract with us, plus those who receive grant money, plus our schools, is nothing new. This is just the final piece of a decades-long obsession with targeting and dismantling anything that might give marginalized people a fair shot, including DEI programs, which honestly started the second the Civil Rights Act passed.
One more time.
This is just the final piece of a decades-long obsession with targeting and dismantling anything that might give marginalized people a fair shot, including DEI programs, which honestly started the second the Civil Rights Act passed.
And these are the same people that were engaged in all of this destructive action against other marginalized communities, mostly the Black community. The same people that will tell you to pull yourself up by your bootstraps. The same people. It is every bit the hypocrisy that we see today when they call for a meritocracy and they call for things to be colorblind and then want to circumvent all manner of process by installing unqualified candidates. By all means, Laura Trump, she should be in the Senate.
Well, I won't back down. No, I won't back down.
I'm surprised they didn't nominate Eric.
The same guy who got so upset when Hillary called his dad's supporters deplorables is now saying that Democrats aren't even human beings? Really?
We know why they didn't nominate Don Jr.
Inflation is basically stagnant. Yeah. The price of a hair curler, maybe has come down a little bit, or at least the inflation on it has come down a bit.
Policies like affirmative action and diversity, equity, inclusion are the closest things we've had to the mythical bootstraps that some of my colleagues insist historically and currently harmed communities need to pick themselves up by. After centuries of efforts to keep us out of schools and universities, from jobs and elected office, Republicans targeting these policies are no accident. Why do predominantly conservative white men believe that the success of a Black person or the opportunity or access of a Black person is an existential threat to them?
We know why. Because any amount of oversight diminishes their total control. That is exactly what that is. And you were correct to mention the idea of the bootstraps. So we understand just how disingenuous that was about pulling yourself up by your bootstraps. It's kind of like when right-wing media talks about Black on Black crime. Yeah, that kind of disingenuous.
DEI is not given any unfair advantage that society itself does not already confer on certain Americans. It merely exists to ensure that all other people, that women, minoritized folks, queer folks, disabled folks, have the same opportunities to succeed and thrive in our workforce and our schools as people who have not had those opportunities systematically and legally stripped from them do.
And that is the problem. And that is the problem. It was all well and good till you said same opportunities. Yeah. Till you said Till you said same opportunities, then yeah, that is not gonna fly. But they said pull yourselves up by your bootstraps, though.
Is our country not greater when all of us have opportunities to succeed and contribute and survive? Our success and our survival as a nation is bound together. Diversity, equity, and inclusion programs only exist to band-aid over decades, hell, centuries of discrimination against people's skin color, their religion, disabilities, gender, or sexual orientations, you name it. Contrary to Republican conjecture, remedying past discrimination is not, in turn, a discrimination.
Not only are they arguing that remedying discrimination is discrimination, they're arguing that the remedy is elevated above the actual discrimination. Because let's be clear, the actual discrimination has never been remedied. Ain't even close to being remedied. Let's be clear about that. So it's not just that they're prosecuting the remedy, they're also elevating the harm of the remedy, the harm of DEI, over the harm of literally all of the factors in American history which led us to a place where we felt like it was needed.
And we're not going to sit here and pretend racism is over just because one black person on the Supreme Court agreed that it should be. What DEI does not do is give some kind of magical pass to better jobs, like some of our colleagues are implying. That middle word, equity, does not mean more than or better than. It means treating people fairly and impartially. It means working to fix generational and systemic discrimination to the betterment of all of us and all of our institutions. But instead, Republicans are trying to bastardize the term DEI to be a slur. When Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson was up for confirmation and when Vice President Harris was added to the ticket, they called them DEI hires. They want you to believe that a Harvard graduate with over 20 years of experience, who happens to be a black woman, is not qualified, but a Fox News personality is qualified to run the Department of Defense, and the WWE executive is qualified to run the Department of Education.
Now here's where they told on themselves, because if Maga had any degree of sophistication, they would have allowed for black people to excel without all of them being subject to being called DEI. The only ones that aren't are the ones in the red hats. The ones in the red hats are fine. But if you are a black person in any public space with any degree of success, you have been called a DEI. Therefore, what you have communicated is, in your mind, it's actually not possible for a black person to be qualified. That is what your exuberance in spouting out DEI as a slur, that's the position that has left you, is that it's not possible for us not to be DEI. So when you talk about the idea of things being merit-based and you talk about how you want to diminish this so everybody has an equal and level playing field, that is completely destroyed by virtue of your own actions. So we can now understand that this has absolutely nothing to do with qualifications. Even if you wanted to try and argue that Linda McMahon or Pete Hegseth or Tulsi Gabbard or Matt Gaetz or RFK, if you wanted to try and argue that they were in fact qualified, what you can't argue is that no black people are ever qualified for anything ever. Because those are the people, that's the group, the empty bin you're left with, that don't get called the DEI without the red hat.
Let's be real. There is an attempt to create a direct correlation between our race, being a black person, and our qualifications. So much as to say that there is no way to be a black woman. There is no resume that a black person could have that would qualify them unless that black person is a Republican. And there is a quota there. And while all of this is happening at the top level of our government, I can promise you these same things are happening on every single level of government and private sector. But those people don't have a national platform to speak out against discriminatory treatment.
Oh, believe me, it started happening at these lower levels well before it got to the highest levels of our government. You better believe that.
Where is a federal worker supposed to turn when another coworker says a racist comment to them in the break room? Where is the same-sex couple who is denied housing supposed to, because of their relationship, supposed to turn? Where is a pregnant woman who was fired for being pregnant supposed to go? Often the only place that they have to give them recourse are the diversity, equity, and inclusion programs. These folks just want to do their jobs, serving the American people in an environment that feels safe and supports them. Making work a better, safer environment for some does not mean it automatically is worse for others. And those complaining about DEI training are probably the ones who need it the most. My Republican colleagues have got to stop punching down on already marginalized communities and face their own fears of a level playing field privately. It's shameful.
It is shameful. In other words, pull yourselves up by your bootstraps, but make sure that you don't rise too high. Therefore, you will become disqualified by virtue of being a DEI, and make sure all the rungs that you hit along the way only cost other Black people or otherwise marginalized communities their positions and never a white person. Congratulations, America. You are our racist of the week, and we gonna be back here again. I guarantee that. I mean, even Larry Bird acknowledged America's racism. That's why I rock with him.
He said, hey, man, you can't put no white dude on me. Hey, that is straight disrespect, right? He said, don't put no white dude on me. So check this out. So the next year we come back, I said, I got somebody for your ass, right? Yeah. He said, who you got? I said, Robin. He said, okay. He's a little better. He said, but don't ever put no white dude on me because that is disrespectful.
Hey, I hope you guys had a wonderful start to your holiday. Shout out to all of our subscribers and members here on the channel, especially those who submitted possibilities and ideas for merch. You will see the results on my website, reeswaters.com. We got a ton of stuff. There's mugs there. There's t-shirts there, especially my depleted but never defeated t-shirt, which you guys really seem to enjoy. So keep sending in your ideas for possibilities at reeswaters.com. I also want to mention, I was messing around on my phone and I happened to see that YouTube actually tells me who the most active members are on the channel. It's too many of you guys to name, but I wanted to give you guys a special nod, and I'll tip my cap whenever I possibly can. I've been talking to a lot of different people, and I think next year we'll probably have some new projects on the way, some special lives and some special projects specifically for the members. So be on the lookout for that. I can't wait to get started. And by the way, the link to membership is in the description box to all of my videos. So just go to a recent video and you will find the link to membership right there.